Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cub Chat Live. We, of course, have a super exciting show today. We're talking about how you can add extra fun to your pack activities by going outside. We're talking guest speakers, community resources, and just finding some wonderful outside talent to enhance your meetings. We've got a really cool guest today. This is John. He's an Eagle Scout and he's a Cub Master. Pack 427 is his pack. And then he also is part of Troop 8422, which is a girls' troop in the Chief Seattle Council. But John, you have a bit of a background with scouting. Can you share with us a little bit about your scouting story?
Absolutely, yeah. So I started as a kid. I did, Wolves through Arrow of Light, and then went on to Scouts BSA, Boy Scouts at the time. And got my Eagle Scout there, did Order of the Arrow, Brotherhood, a lot of that sort of stuff, had a ton of fun. And then, as with most folks, I took, the vacation from scouting, went to college, and then eventually when I had a family, it was pretty clear, like when we have kids, it's time to get back into it. And so then, took the first year in Tigers with my son to just kind of be a parent. And then it was very clear very quickly that time to step up into leadership. And I've been all in ever since.
Isn't that the way that it goes? So we're really lucky to have you. You are a boots on the ground volunteer. For our audience out there, wherever you're watching, whether you're watching on a council page or on the Scouting Magazine page, Scout Life page, Boy Scouts of America page, Cub Scouts page, join our live conversation by heading to the Scouting Magazine Facebook page. Comment along. We're sharing comments throughout the show. So we want to give a quick shout out to Pack 307 and Pack 84. Thanks for tuning in. John, let's just get right to it. What are we talking about when we talk about outsourcing talent for meetings?
Right. So it's a good question. It's a broad concept, but the high level thing is you're probably already doing it already. So a lot of packs, you might bring in a firefighter or a police officer, maybe bring in the canine unit, right? So those are all outsourced talent. We're really talking about people that are outside your pack or outside your, parental group. So what can they do to bring in new and interesting ideas or activities or that sort of stuff? So even if you've done like a catered meal for your blue and gold, that could also be considered outsourcing, some of your resources or some of your talent. So what can you pull in from outside your pack, right? And it's a great way to get volunteers from your pack to start coming in, right? You start small. You say, hey, a parent in your pack, they could bring in their hobby or that sort of thing. Or you can even get a friend of a friend that, they know somebody who's like super into ham radio or whatever, and they can bring that in. So it's what resources outside your pack can you leverage to make your program fun and exciting, right? Because Scouts is game with purpose, right?
Yes, and honestly, it seems like it would make it easier on you as a leader. You don't have to pretend you're an expert at something you're not. You can bring in outside resources like, hint, hint, we're doing for this show. I certainly couldn't speak to this topic. We're lucky to have you on, John.
Right, exactly.
Yes. Quick shout out to Pack 38 and Troop 38. Everyone at home, let us know what kind of outside resources, outsourced talent do you bring to your meetings? We'd love to give you a shout out and read those ideas during the show. John, why exactly would a unit bring in outside speakers for pack events?
Right. It's a really great question, right? So load balancing is the first and easiest one. As a leader, there's a lot to do. And, let's face it, sometimes you just don't have enough time to do stuff. So it's an easy way to just say, hey, let's get somebody else to run part of our meeting for us. And there are so many good resources for that. Outside of that, the Scouts love novelty, especially in the kindergarten through 5th grade where Cub Scouts is really targeted. They love novelty. And so when you can bring in somebody from the outside that is really passionate about what they do, the kids are going to love it, right? And then there's often skills and equipment that you don't have, right? So you may not have a bunch of ham radio equipment. You may not have a bunch of science expertise. You may not have, dogs with jobs or whatever. And so these are all things that outside people do have, and you can bring them in to make your program even better. And then beyond that, right, beyond bringing stuff into your pack and beyond trying to make it easier on yourself potentially, it's a great way to advertise to the community, right? So making sure that people know, hey, we're still here. Cub Scouts and Scouts BSA is still here. We're still active in your community. And it's also a great way to find volunteers. So as a quick aside, we have a friend who we know through martial arts that we do, and he's a political person, right? He's part of our local council for one of the counties, and he hadn't done anything with Scouts or whatever. But we said, hey, we need to do building a better world for our Webelos Den, And so the kids talked to him. He loved it. We did it a couple times. He posted about it on Facebook. And now he's got all kinds of scout organizations that are contacting him because they need to get that requirement satisfied and they don't know who to contact. But he's also loving it because these are all his constituents and he's able to talk to people about, topics that he cares about. So it's really mutually beneficial. And then if you want to get kind of nerdy about it, the bottom line is that the method of scouting is adult association and being home and neighborhood centric, right? The people that we're talking about, they're often adults, right? So we're bringing in outside people to help use the methods of scouting. And we're bringing in people that are part of your neighborhood community. And that's what Cub Scouts is about, is trying to get to know the people in your community. So it's, sort of what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, we talk about that. Cub Scouts is about building citizens, and getting to know members of your community is absolutely part of being a great citizen. Shout out to Pack 21, Pack 464, Pack 67. We talked a little bit about how I want to get to Luke's comment here in Chittenango, New York. Like that name. Okay. Luke says, I bring in as many professionals as possible. If I can bring in the pros, then we go to them. We're going to an observatory next week. I like this because it kind of made me think, bringing an outsider in might be the perfect catalyst for some fun activities you could do outside of a meeting. So that might,
Right.
Let's go to the observatory after we get an expert who's coming from there to speak to us.
Exactly. Like this month, for example, this coming month, we're going to try and get the Sea Scouts to come out, and then we're seeing if the Scouts want to go on a boat ride on the Sea Scout ship next month, right? So there's great ways where you can tie these things together to make it a multi-event opportunity, right? Start small, grow bigger, that sort of thing.
Yes, that's a good idea. I didn't even think about, bringing other scouts to your Cub Scouts meetings. And you've kind of touched on this, but I'm curious, what is in it for outside speakers? Why would they be willing to help?
Right. So lots of clubs want to share their passion, right? They're passionate about it and they want to share it, right? Because they can have their own little small group, but if they don't share it with the outside world, it's not as much fun. So you see a lot of people like radio groups, historical reenactment groups, like they have a very outward facing thing that they do that they want to share. And then let's face it, many of the clubs out there are graying, right? So they need younger people to get involved with their hobbies in order for that hobby to continue. So they have a vested interest in making sure that, their hobby continues. They love it. They want to share it. And the more youth that they can get involved, the better off they are. And let's face it, helping kids is pretty non-controversial. There's a lot of things that people can do, and people may or may not get grumpy about stuff. But I think everybody can agree that helping kids, especially helping scouts, is pretty straightforward. And then the last really easy answer is for some of these people, it's money, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about what types of talent you might bring in. But if they charge a fee, they want you to come, or maybe they want to be able to, book the people from your pack. They want to get recommendations and referrals for other events that they might do where they might get it as a paying gig. So there's lots of reasons why.
Yeah, as my dad would always say, it never hurts to ask. And I especially think that is true with scouting. Sometimes you think, no one really knows about the program. I don't know if people around here understand, but I find that when I drop the word scouts, oftentimes it's shocking the doors that open, or the people who are interested or have some kind of connection, whether they were in scouts themselves or their grandpa was, and they were building Pinewood Derby cars for fun later. So of course they'd come to the meeting.
Right.
It just never hurts to ask and mention who you are. I really like your point about helping kids is pretty non-controversial. I think sometimes we get nervous to ask, thinking like, are they going to want to affiliate with us, whatever? But I feel like it's Cub Scouts. Oftentimes they're thinking, they have this picture in their head of kids and they're totally willing to help out. Quick shout out to Troop 601 and Pack 320. Thanks for watching, guys. Rusty says they bring in local police department, fire department, representative from the Conservancy District, and a bunch of other people from other areas. Yeah, I feel like that's right on target kind of with what we're talking about. And Luke echoes, it's always easy to ask if you're already anticipating the no. Yeah, it's the worst thing that can happen is they say no.
Exactly.
Okay, this is such a great conversation. Everybody at home, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about the merits of bringing in some outside help, outside speakers, outside resources into your Cub Scout meetings, other unit meetings. This could work for that as well with troops or Sea Scout ships or venturing crews. The same could be true. We've covered a few components of this, and we're also reading some of your comments live as you let us know what kind of outside resources you bring to your meetings. We've talked about some examples of what outsourced talent can look like, but what are some other examples of outsourced talent?
Right. So like we talked about earlier, there's the traditional examples, and many of you in the chat have mentioned these, right? So you've got police, fire, doctors, military, and some of these are already built into rank requirements. And so the reason I like thinking about those is because if you read through the rank requirements, like when you're doing your planning, you'll see, oh, they want us to bring in this outside help to enrich our program. So they're good hints. But then the next step is, well, what about beyond that? So another one that's really common is not every pack has a Pinewood Derby track. And so our pack for a while didn't have a track either. And so we'd actually hire an outside Pinewood Derby guy, and he would come and he would actually run the Pinewood Derby for us. And for a couple of years, that actually made a lot of sense for our pack. Another one that people don't always think about is troops. Troops are technically outside resources, depending on how your troop or how your pack is structured. So bringing in a troop, bringing in a Sea Scout ship, bringing in a venturing crew, bringing in an explorer post. These are all scouting units that they're already in the program. They want new scouts to join their program. So they've got that vested interest. And then many of their rank requirements require them to go and put on an event for another scout, particularly a younger scout. So there's a lot of older scout requirements that tie in. So that's super nice. And then the next layer, you get into like STEM organizations, for example, ham radio, coding clubs, mad scientist types of people, maybe a college club. If you're in a college town and you've got, one of the racing clubs or whatever, these are all people that, especially the STEM field in particular, and especially if your pack is serving girls in particular, they all have a vested interest in trying to ensure that there's equity across the different professions that they're interested in. And so you can tap into that to make sure that you're getting people, especially in K through 5, and especially the girls, a lot of those STEM fields, there's a lot of resources particularly targeted to them, but you can serve your whole pack in the process, right? So it's not targeted to just one group. Then you get special interest groups. These include things like historical reenactment clubs. We brought in somebody from the Sons of the American Revolution, and he did a great talk. He was in full gear, and he had a bunch of actual artifacts from that time period. And he talked about how youth and families served the Revolutionary War, and how kids, the scouts that were there, their age, were actually helping the Revolutionary War effort, which was really, really neat. And then racing clubs, maybe a dog training club, like you get some dogs with a job, or you get, some scent dogs or something. Those can be really great. Some of you mentioned in the chat local conservatories or observatories. There's a lot of museums and science centers. Like their target market is the kids that you're serving. So how can you partner with them? Our local science center, you can actually do an overnight there. So that can be a great opportunity both to get, again, a presentation and an outing to go along with it. So you double up in your value. The next step beyond that is professional performers, right? If they would be fun at a school assembly, if they would be fun at a birthday party, they will be fun at the same age group in front of your pack, right? So magicians, the animal people, whether they're the reptile person or the bug person or whatever, jugglers. You can also get into, like we said, the mad science people. There's a lot of these professionals that they want to do stuff, yo-yo people. And then the last one beyond that really is food providers, right? Like if you're doing blue and gold, you can think really creatively about how you do your blue and gold, right? Yes, you can do it as a potluck. Many packs do that, but you can also have it catered, right? That might be a fun way, perhaps even to help support one of the families in your pack. Perhaps they have a catering business or something, right? So there's all kinds of different ways you can involve your community in this effort.
Made me have so many ideas as we're going through each of these, because I kind of relate it. So we do these live shows once a week, or we've done them more than once a week for a long time, or at least once a week. And even before the pandemic, we were doing some in person. And I'm just thinking, honestly, how easy it is on us. And we do a little bit of upfront work to ask if somebody wants to come on the show. And then how much easier it is for us when we're hosting and we get to have on these experts who are more entertaining. They know more about whatever subject they're talking about. They have all these props and things that I wouldn't have otherwise. And of course, they've got the knowledge. I mean, we've had guests from like the video game museum come on. You could have athletes for sure who might be willing to, and I guess Zoom, there's not a limitation that somebody could Zoom into a meeting as well if they can't come on site. it just gets my mind running. I'm wondering if anybody at home has either had somebody who's actually come to a meeting that you think was a creative idea you'd be willing to share, or if maybe you have some ideas of people you would like to invite. Let us know in the comments. I'd love to read those. Civ Natalie says they went to the fire station and realized that one of the firemen was a scout leader for another scout group. That's great. Hike Mike says writing thank you letters to the performers could be a good service project. Yes, so that,
Absolutely.
you're getting kind of like 2 meetings worth of activities.
Yeah.
Civ Natalie also says a surprise trip to the theater to see Jungle Book. Anthony says they hired a magician one year. Yeah, magician, definitely. I feel like that's another one. You can have the magician, and then at the next meeting, you might go to scoutlife.org and find one of the trick how-tos that you could run through with the scouts. All that content is already done for you. I was thinking the same thing when you said maybe bringing like a service animal in, or like some kind of a dog thing. Like we have a how-to on dog treats on scoutlife.org too. So maybe you could make those one week, encourage kids to give them to their own dogs, or you could check with if a rescue org's coming and see, would they be willing to let you give treats to those dogs? There's just all kinds of ideas. And I think, like we said earlier, these could build into multiple meetings.
Right. And I love layering. We've done that a lot with our pack, right? So if you can like have an outside person, but it also turns into a service project, but also turns into an outing. And oh, by the way, it also serves some rank requirements for some folks, right? That's the best, right? Because now you're serving lots of different needs with one thing, right? So you reduce the amount of effort and increase the amount of value.
Absolutely. Cub Scout Pack 464 says the Red Cross did a presentation for them. Perfect example. A lot of organizations, part of what they do is present. Like they've got dedicated people who go and present at meetings all day, every day. So definitely reach out to organizations like Salvation Army, Red Cross, what have you.
Right. There's also other awards, right? Some of the smaller awards where there's value in contacting other packs that might be in different countries, right? The Far East Council or the Transatlantic Council, right? So you can do some of those sorts of things for the Messenger of Peace or whatnot. So even other scouting units your own age could be considered outside presenters in the right circumstances.
That's such a good idea. And you can even go outside the council. Other world scouting organizations could, we hear about that all the time, units that do regular Zoom meetings with different units across the world, the literal world. Luke says they had an EMS come in, and they've also met at a firehouse, which is great. And EMS is another great example. I don't think it would be too terribly difficult potentially to get an EMS or an EMT to come to your meeting. And generally, I think kids get really fired up to get to ask a bunch of questions to EMTs. So that's a great idea.
Always better when they come planned rather than, as needed.
That's an excellent point. We do thank the EMTs who've shown up to many a unit meeting where something went wrong, but we're talking about planning an informational meeting with an EMT or EMS. Hello to the Jersey Shore Council, and Hike Mike adds in chartered organizations can give presentations. They might attract parents to their group. That's a great point. Depending on what your charter organization is, it could be really, really interesting to have somebody from there come speak, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so here is the big secret. We've got all these ideas. How do you find these people to ask to come to the meetings?
Yeah, that's always the tricky part. And it really comes down to what type of resource are you trying to leverage? So let's start with the easy ones, which is scout resources, right? So the best way to access scout resources is to use your scouting network, right? So Roundtable is the number one resource, right? Because those are people that are really, really close by. They're geographically near you. And then district and council events. So when you go to Klondike or Camporee or these other events, talk to other units. Training, right? If you're going to Wood Badge, if you're going to Baloo, if you're going to IOLS or any of these other trainings, those are great places for you to meet other people, other units that you can then expand your scouting network, and then you can collaborate with them. And then scouting alumni. Those are the folks that maybe they were in your pack a while ago. They've moved on and doing other stuff, but they're still that friend of a friend of a friend sort of thing. The next step is the performers, right? And like we talked about earlier, those are the same people that are doing school assemblies or birthday parties. So, pay attention when your kids go into birthday parties in elementary school. If they went to a party and there was a really cool performer, ask them, hey, can I get the contact info for that performer? Because they might be really great for your pack meeting, right? So asking your friends and family for the folks that they're bringing out. For the special interest clubs, I like internet searches, right? And camporees. So we have a big camporee called Wash Jam. They do it every 4 years. It's sort of like a local jamboree. And they brought out actually the Sons of the American Revolution. So that's actually where I met them. And that's how I got the contact info to bring them to our PAC meeting. So I speak from experience when I can say that works, right? And then the other really big one is community events, right? Parades, community festivals, especially some of the different cultural festivals can be really, really useful. Farmers markets, and then the community center activity boards in your local area are all great ways to find people. Because remember, they're trying to advertise to you as much as you're trying to find them.
Yeah, oftentimes it seems like it's in their interest to come to you too, depending on who you're thinking about inviting to a meeting. A few great comments have rolled in. Sabrina says they had an EMS come visit, and one year he brought an ambulance. Again, can you beat that prop? He brings an ambulance, probably got to show the inside of it to the kids. And I imagine that is just really beneficial because hopefully most kids don't know what the inside of an ambulance looks like. And then they might have some idea. They might be familiar with it in case an unfortunate incident where they have to get in one someday. They kind of know what to expect. It might ease some anxiety. I think that's a great idea. And then she also says she's amazed at some of the people she's met at Powwow. Sabrina, let us know what Powwow is. I'm going to imagine that is an event that brings multiple units together.
I think that's similar to Roundtable. Different units and councils seem to have different names for the same sort of concept. So yeah, Roundtable, Powwow.
Well, that also brings up, like, it seems like the greatest place to find out, who to invite to meetings and their contact information, who works, who's actually going to show up, is just to talk to other volunteers. I'm thinking, obviously, in our comments right here would be a great place to ask and share if you are looking for a sounding board, or there's a Cub Scout volunteers group where I'm sure if you put your city and your unit and what you're looking for, people would be happy to chime in and say, oh yeah, invite Todd. He's just the greatest EMT and he loves to come to Scout meetings, or who even knows.
Yep, we've gotten some great information from like some of the Facebook groups. There's some really lovely, the Cub Scout Volunteers one on Facebook is awesome. Obviously, with anything on there, you have to vet it. And you also have to think about, is it the right size for your pack? So if you've got a tiny pack, there's certain things that you can do. If you've got a giant pack, there's other things you can do. So you have to figure out if it's right sized. But if you think about it, there's a lot of great resources that you can be creative with.
Yes. Okay. That's a great point. Make sure you have to do your due diligence to make sure it works for you, but it's a handy resource to have at your fingertips.
Absolutely.
Rusty says something that makes me laugh. Open up the yellow pages, close your eyes, and wherever you look to, that's your speaker for the week. If you are at home wondering, what do I do with yellow pages anymore? Rusty has given you the perfect idea. You just find who you want to invite to a unit meeting. Janet echoes that inviting someone from your charter organization makes a lot of sense. Tom says, hey, Tom, we had a scout from the Transatlantic Council invite the Chief Scout Executive visit her troop meeting in Europe via Zoom. Roger Mosby was delighted to participate. That's the exact thing I'm talking about. Just ask. You never know.
Yep.
We've had a lot of luck just asking astronauts to come talk on the show, or authors who have a book coming out, recording artists who want to play a song. I mean, people have a soft spot for scouts, that's for sure. Luke has another great idea. They've had good luck with local tribes in their area that have an outreach program. It seems like bringing Native American tribes or representatives from Native American tribes into a unit meeting is a really good idea. And I definitely think that youth enjoy asking questions and learning about all kinds of cultures. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
I work in accessibility, and that's another great place is finding someone who works with a local disability resource center, or like Guide Dogs for the Blind, or any of those sorts of folks. I brought in a gentleman that I worked with who happened to have a guide dog and used some assistive technology, and the kids were super fascinated about that. And we actually built a whole PAC meeting around trying to, build empathy and all that sort of stuff. And he was kind of the highlight guest speaker for that. So they loved it.
Yeah, it's really your chance to broaden the horizons of youth who might not otherwise get to experience all these different people who'd be willing to come and talk to a group of kids. The Chamber of Commerce is a great resource, Luke says. I think that's a great idea. We've got another shout out for an airport fire department. That's a distinction. Oh, yeah. That's pretty cool. I'm thinking, just because you mentioned it, what about something like inviting somebody who has a background with martial arts?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you have to be careful. Like, this actually kind of leads into the challenges you might face trying to do this, right? So you have to be careful of, youth protection, guide to safe scouting, the oath and law. Like, is what you're thinking about compatible? And so, like, with the martial arts thing, there are some specific guide to safe scouting things that you have to be mindful of, but at the same time could be totally compatible with a PAC meeting. Again, like, if the scouts would find it interesting and fun and meaningful, then by all means do your due diligence and check with the people involved with your pack to make sure it's compatible. But then by all means, if it's fun, go for it, right? And then you've got the time and logistics and cost, right? So is there an expectation of payment? Do you need to offset their driving and that sort of stuff? And then is it a good program fit, right? So are you going to do it at the pack meeting, or are you going to do it as a separate event? Are you going to include, if there's a cost, is it included, or is this going to be an a la carte sort of thing? And then remember age appropriateness, right? So you've got a pretty big age span, because I like the joke that, kindergartners, they start as glorified preschoolers, and then you've got your AOLs, which are, glorified middle schoolers. So you've got a really wide age range, and you want to think about, like, is this activity good for the whole age range, or maybe only for, the older half or the younger half, and how are you going to address those needs? And then, like we've actually been discussing a lot, is this a single interaction, right? Are they just going to come to the pack meeting and kind of do their song and dance and then be gone? Or is this part of a deeper interaction where you say, hey, we're going to do a pack meeting, and then there's going to be an outing, and oh, by the way, if everybody participates, then they're going to get a Nova award or some other award as a result, right?
I love these distinctions. It's things you definitely need to think through, and it makes me think too, you have to make sure it's like a geographical, cultural fit. You wouldn't necessarily bring in like an agricultural expert who's going to teach a bunch of New York City Cub Scouts how to plant these like robust, huge gardens. They need tools for what they can do in their own, unless they have an interest in it and maybe they want to move out somewhere. Well, it could be a yes, but
there's sort of an interesting diversity play there, right? So on the one hand, you might say, hey, only try to find things that are compatible with my pack that would resonate with them. But remember, our job is to inspire them and give them new ideas. And so you might bring in precisely that, to precisely those kids, to give them an idea of how other people live and what other opportunities there are. So even if they spend their whole life in New York, if they have a little bit more, understanding of how the food supply works, then that can be really impactful. So like, I totally agree. At the same time, like,
no, it's a great
think about
point.
The flip side too, right?
No, it's an excellent point. It's just the kind of thing to think through before you do it. I'm so glad you said that. I've totally changed my mind. I definitely bring the agricultural expert to New York City, and it also could be totally aspirational for those scouts to think like, one day I do want to have a huge garden.
Just like, farm people sometimes want to move to the big city. You never know. City people are moving out to the farms too.
Yes. Very true. Harold says for St. George's Day, they got members from the local, I don't know.
SCA is Society for Creative Anachronism. They're like medieval times types of
cool.
players, right? So they'll often do like sword fights or whatever.
That's very cool. And I also think I remember Anthony said that he's invited, Anthony Berger's invited various Star Wars.
Yeah, the 501st. Yeah, we actually worked on that. We weren't able to get them this year, but yeah, the 501st, you can find them online. They have local chapters all over. And you basically like send in a request saying like, who do you want to show up? How many people? And I've seen all over people have done like blue and gold banquets that were Star Wars themed. And then the highlight was like, they got Darth Vader and Boba Fett to show up, and they did like a little, lightsaber battle, and then they took some photos with the scouts or whatever. It was incredible.
I mean, seriously, that's a meeting I think that kids will remember their whole lives.
Right.
A lot of these are, though. I feel like often we can think back to like, oh yeah, I remember that time when this guy came and spoke. I remember a dairy farmer coming to speak at a school event. That stuff is very memorable. This
right.
One
really thing to consider is like the program fit in terms of your theme. So like this past year in October, since it was Halloween month, I brought in cosplayers, right? And so the basic, thesis was these people like costumes so much that they make awesome ones that they wear other times of the year, just, not just Halloween. And so they talked about how they built costumes. And then we had a whole thing about like the activity was, how do you build costumes? And they built like a small thing, but it was, here's a small example that you can do right now to build to what they're trying to do, that's their passion. And some of them even make it their profession, right? Earth Day month is April, as I recall, right? So, are you going to bring in farmers market people in April to coincide with that, right? So there's a lot of opportunity for program fits where you can make those connections and make them deeper, not just, why is this random person here? They're cool, I love them, but if you can go a little deeper, even better.
Yeah, it can definitely be thematic. That's a good way to like think about like who could we have next? We'll think what holidays or official or funny holidays are coming up, or like Earth Recognition Day. That's a great idea.
Right.
Man, we could keep talking and talking. This has been a really good conversation. Everybody at home, if you're watching and you still have thoughts and ideas to share, please leave them in the comments. John, I think we need to have you come back. This is awesome. You have so much wonderful knowledge to share and experience
Right.
as this volunteer.
Well, I think next week you guys are talking about program planning, right?
I think that sounds right.
And I think that's me.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, you'll be with Aaron, and he's going to be excited to talk to you. I'm so glad we're having you back. Is there anything that we've missed? Anything you want to add?
No, I think the high level thing is just be creative, right? Embrace your community, embrace your local flavor, and also embrace the opportunity for something different. Like one thing we haven't really touched on is, at least my area is very multicultural in nature, and you could even bring in other cultural organizations, right? And be it, bringing in like food and culture and that sort of stuff. Some folks mentioned like local Native American tribes, but there's also different faith organizations that have a very different cultural blend that could be really great too. So like just broadly, like think about who they're probably a resource that you can leverage, right? Anybody who's not you, right? Anybody who's different than you, they probably want to help Scouts. And so just ask.
That's a great message to leave on. Everybody at home, if you want to catch past episodes of Cub Chat Live, you can check those out online. I believe we'll put the URL up at the bottom of the screen. You can see this episode and many, many, many others. And we'll be back next Friday at same time, 2 p.m. Central, with another wonderful Cub Chat Live. Until then, it has been our pleasure to get to talk with you guys. Keep the comments coming, and we'll see you next time.